Dear Lord, in the quiet moments of loss, teach us to see what still remains. In grief, help us find grace. In goodbye, open the door to unexpected beginnings. And when we feel most alone, remind us that sometimes the people we once left behind are exactly who we were always meant to return to. Amen. Welcome back to Mr. Comfort Stories, your home of comfort, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. Today's story is about legacy, regret, and a second chance you never saw coming. If you've ever buried someone with unspoken words still heavy in your heart, if you've ever looked into a child's eyes and seen a truth that shakes you to the core, if you believe that even the most broken chapters can be rewritten with love, then stay with me. You don't want to miss this. Gillies tightened his grip around the polished brass handle of the casket. The Arizona sun was relentless, burning down on the black suit that already clung to his skin with sweat. But he barely noticed. Heat was the least of his concerns. Grief, however, that was a different weight entirely. It pressed on his chest like an anchor. This wasn't just a funeral. It was the end of a foundation, a father, a guide, the only parent he had left. The crowd around the graveside blurred in his peripheral vision. Distant voices, soft sniffles, fans fluttering like restless wings. The pastor's words faded in and out, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Gillies felt a lump rise in his throat. He wasn't ready. He thought he was, but nothing prepared him for this moment. He had flown in from New York yesterday. Direct flight, first class, a black suit pressed and waiting in his garment bag. None of that helped. Not when he had to walk behind the casket of the man who had raised him with more stern silence than hugs, but who had, in his own way, always shown love through expectation. Big G, they called him. A nickname born of respect. Gillies Sr., tough, commanding, always the first to rise at the ranch and the last to leave the small tech office he'd built with his bare hands decades ago. But to Gillies Jr., he was just Dad. A complicated man. A demanding one. But his dad, all the same. Now gone. He stepped back as the casket was gently lowered, a movement so slow and final it made his stomach turn. His hands shook slightly. The ceremonial roses dropped in one by one from loved ones around the circle, red against dark wood. Gillies' stepmother stood with trembling shoulders, dabbing at her eyes with a folded lace handkerchief. She had barely spoken all morning. Gillies glanced over the crowd, familiar faces and half-remembered ones, neighbors, his father's old colleagues, a few ranch hands, childhood friends. All here, all sweating under the desert sun, all paying tribute to a man who rarely asked for anything but gave what he could in his own way. He managed polite nods, handshakes, brief hugs. He had learned to perform grief in public, the expected son. Strong, stoic, proper, but when he turned toward the back of the cemetery, just past the shade of a gnarled mesquite tree, something caught his eye. A woman. Tall, poised, wrapped in a simple black dress that draped across her like a quiet shadow. Her dark curls were pulled back neatly. Sunglasses veiled her eyes. And, on either side of her stood two young boys, perhaps 8 years old, wearing tiny navy suits, fidgeting in that way kids do when forced to stand still too long. Gillies froze. The world narrowed, because he knew that woman, Amanda. Time didn't dull the memory. If anything, it sharpened it like broken glass. College sweethearts, study partners turned soulmates, until reality cut them apart. He left Arizona for New York. She stayed, and he told himself it was the right thing. Career first, future later. They were young. There'd be time. But there hadn't been. He hadn't seen her in nearly 9 years. Yet here she stood, under the mesquite tree, holding the hands of two boys. Who had his eyes? Gillies blinked. No, he must be mistaken. But as one of the boys tilted his head and stared back, a chill slid down Gillies' spine. Green eyes. Not hazel, not brown. Vivid, piercing green. The same rare color that had earned Gillies teasing in elementary school and compliments in high school. His mother had them. He inherited them. They were unmistakable. The boy whispered something to Amanda and pointed. Amanda turned. Their eyes met, and suddenly the funeral didn't feel like the biggest moment of the day anymore. Amanda's lips parted. She froze, just for a second. A flicker of surprise, maybe even regret, moved across her face. She nodded faintly, as if acknowledging his shock from across the crowd, but she didn't move. Neither did Gillies. He felt like someone had knocked the air out of him. He tried to process Amanda. 2 boys. One named Matthew. He heard her call to him softly when the child started to wander too far. Matthew. His grandfather's name. He'd told Amanda once it was the strongest name he knew. Had she remembered? Everything clicked and nothing made sense. She was here. The boys were here. And Gillies didn't know what to do. His stepmother touched his arm. "Gillies, are you all right?" He nodded stiffly. "I'm okay." But he wasn't. His past just showed up at his father's grave, and it looked an awful lot like his future. If you believe some things, and some people, are meant to return at the perfect moment, hit the like button and comment, "It's never too late" below. Your story might just be waiting to begin. The moment lingered longer than it should have. Gillies staring at Amanda. Amanda staring back, the world around them softening into a muted hum. People drifted past without noticing the invisible cord tightening. Between 2 people who hadn't shared a breath in almost a decade, Gillies didn't move at first. His feet felt stuck in the sandy soil, as if the ground itself knew that any step toward her would change everything. But the longer he waited, the heavier his chest felt. All morning he'd managed to keep his grief contained, but this was something else entirely. His stepmother drifted elsewhere among the guests, allowing him a quiet moment. He exhaled slowly, tasting dust and regret at the back of his throat. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. He had to walk over there, not because he had answers, but because he needed them. He crossed the funeral grounds with cautious steps, conscious of the solemn atmosphere that still hung over the cemetery. The dry grass crackled faintly beneath his shoes. A few attendees offered him sympathetic nods, but he barely noticed. His attention was locked on the woman standing beneath the mesquite tree. Amanda shifted slightly as he approached, one arm instinctively drawing the twins closer, not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. The boys watched Gillies with quiet curiosity, their matching green eyes bright under the harsh sunlight. Those eyes kept tugging at his chest. Gillies finally stopped a few feet away, close enough to speak but far enough to respect the delicate moment. "Amanda." His voice cracked before he could steady it. "Hi." She removed her sunglasses slowly, letting him see her eyes fully for the first time since their college years. A soft breath escaped her. "Gillies," she replied quietly. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," he said, swallowing hard. "It means more than you know." They lingered in a silence heavy with old memories. He wasn't sure what to say next. For years he had imagined what it might be like to see her again, but none of those imagined moments took place at his father's funeral under a blazing sun with 2 children, watching like they had front-row seats to a show they didn't understand. Gillies slowly lowered his gaze to the boys, offering them a gentle smile. "Hi." There, the twin on Amanda's right nudged closer to her but didn't hide. The other boy took a small step forward, studying Gillies with a bravery that tugged at his heart. "This is Matthew," Amanda said softly, placing a hand on the taller boy's shoulder. "And this is Mason." "Hi," Mason said with a tiny wave. Matthew echoed it shyly, shifting his weight but never looking away from Gillies. Gillies crouched down a bit, meeting them at eye level. "Nice to meet you both," he said. "You 2 look sharp. Those suits are cooler than anything I wore at your age." A small smile tugged at Mason's mouth. Matthew ducked his head, as if trying not to smile at a time that felt too quiet for it. Amanda cleared her throat gently, grounding the moment. "We didn't want to disturb anything. We came to pay our respects. Your father was always kind to me back then." Gillies nodded. "He liked you," he said honestly, "more than he ever admitted. He hesitated, then added softly, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I almost didn't come," she admitted. "But something told me I should." Another pause, another wave of emotion. Neither of them dared confront in front of the twins. The boys fidgeted. Mason adjusted his tie. Matthew kicked a pebble with his polished shoe. Gillies's eyes fell to Matthew's face again. Those green eyes. The same shape, the same color, the same depth. His chest tightened painfully. "How old are you two?" he asked, trying to sound light. "We're 8, Mason answered proudly. "Almost 9, Matthew corrected, lifting his chin slightly. Their voices, even their tone, mirrored each other. Twins, absolutely. But their features. Gillies could feel something stirring inside him, something he wasn't ready to name yet. "That's a great age," he managed, though his heart thudded unsteadily. The Arizona wind passed through the mesquite branches, scattering a few dry leaves around their feet. The sound filled the space between them, a soft reminder that the world kept moving, even when the past suddenly reached out and grabbed hold of you. Amanda's fingers brushed her dress, a subtle sign she was nervous. She lifted her chin. "I didn't want to intrude on you. I just wanted to pay my respects and let the boys see." Her voice faltered slightly. Gillies watched her closely. There were lines around her eyes now. Not harsh ones, but gentle impressions of sleepless nights, laughter shared with children, and years of quiet strength. She had grown into herself in a way that made his chest ache. "You're not intruding," he said quietly. "I'm glad you're here." The twins exchanged glances as if sensing something important was being unsaid. Mason tugged at Amanda's hand. "Mama, can we sit down? It's hot." Amanda nodded. "Yes, baby." "Just a minute." Gillies motioned toward a shaded bench nearby. "If you want, we can sit for a moment. There's still a bit of time before everyone leaves." Amanda hesitated. He recognized that hesitation, the Amanda who always thought carefully before stepping into something emotional. Finally, she nodded. "All right." They moved to the bench beneath the tree. The twins sat close to Amanda, and Gillies took the other end, leaving. Enough space to respect boundaries while still sharing the moment. As soon as they sat, Gillies noticed Mason tracing patterns in the dirt with his shoe. Matthew leaned against Amanda, watching Gillies again with a quiet curiosity that felt too familiar. "You remind me of someone," Gillies said softly to Matthew, unable to help himself. Amanda's shoulders tensed, barely, but enough that he noticed. Gillies swallowed. "It's the eyes," he murmured. Matthew blinked. "People always say that," he replied innocently. Mason chimed in. "Mama says we got them from someone special." Gillies felt the breath catch in his lungs. Amanda gently placed a hand on Mason's back. "That's enough, sweetheart." The boys fell quiet. Gillies lifted his gaze to Amanda, and their eyes locked once again. This time, the weight of it hit harder than before. Something unspoken pulsed between them, something raw, heavy, and inevitable. Before he could put words to it, Amanda stood, smoothing her dress. "We should get going," she said softly. "It's been a long morning." Gillies rose too. "Amanda, could we talk later, somewhere quieter, just us? Well, with the boys too, if that's okay." The hesitation returned. A long, thoughtful moment passed. Finally, she nodded. "There's a cafe in town, Bluebird Cafe. We could meet there in an hour." Relief swept through him. "I'll be there." Amanda reached into her purse and tore a small page from a notepad. She scribbled quickly, then handed it to him. Her handwriting hadn't changed. Soft curves, careful strokes. He took the note gently. "Thank you." She nodded, then guided Matthew and Mason toward the parking area. The boys followed obediently, their small hands grasping hers. Just before they reached the car, Mason looked back and waved. Gillies returned the wave slowly, feeling a strange warmth rise through his chest. As the SUV pulled away, kicking up a light cloud of dust, he stood alone under the mesquite tree, the weight of grief and a new, unexpected emotion pressing together inside him. Amanda was back. The twins were real. and something inside him whispered that life was about to change in ways he never imagined. Gillies sat in his rental car outside Bluebird Cafe for a full minute before gathering enough courage to step out. The familiar faded blue awning stirred gently as cars passed along Elm Street, and the warm scent of brewed coffee drifted onto the sidewalk. He remembered this place from years ago. Late breakfasts with Amanda, iced drinks on hot afternoons, moments of young love he once took for granted. He inhaled sharply, rubbing his palms against his thighs to steady himself. "Get it together," he muttered under his breath. But nothing inside him felt steady. His father was gone. His past had just walked back into his life. And now, inside that cafe, waited two boys who looked like he used to at their age. Two boys with his eyes. He opened the door and walked toward the patio seating area. Amanda was already there, sitting at a round table under the shade of an oak tree. Matthew and Mason sat beside her, sipping lemonade from plastic cups, their small feet dangling off their chairs. Amanda's hair was pulled back again, but a few curls had escaped and framed her face. She looked tired, beautiful, careful. When she saw Gillies, she offered a small, polite smile, the kind that hid more than it revealed. "Hi," he greeted, trying not to sound winded from nerves. "You're right on time," Amanda said, motioning to the empty seat across from her. "Have a seat." Gillies pulled out the chair, but as he did, the leg caught on the uneven patio board, causing the table to wobble slightly. A few drops of Mason's lemonade splashed onto the surface. Mason jumped back with wide eyes. "Oh, sorry," Gillies said quickly, grabbing a napkin. "It's okay," Amanda assured him, already blotting the spill. Their hands nearly touched before she pulled hers back. "We're fine." Matthew studied him quietly, clutching his drink with both hands. Mason, on the other hand, leaned forward boldly. "Are you clumsy?" he asked with childlike bluntness. Gillies cracked a sheepish grin. "Today, maybe a little." Amanda stifled a soft laugh. The sound eased a knot inside him he didn't know he'd been holding. A waitress passed by, placing menus on the table. "Y'all doing all right?" she asked, cheerfully. "We're good, thank you," Amanda said. Gillies nodded, though his pulse was racing. The menu blurred in his hands. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't thirsty. He was simply trying not to fall apart thinking about the 1,000 questions he needed to ask, and the 1,000 answers he feared receiving. But before he could speak, one of the boys did. "Mama, can we have fries?" Mason asked. Amanda raised an eyebrow. "You already had fries." "But those were different fries," he countered. Gillies smiled softly. "How about we share a plate? I'll help you finish them." "Really?" Matthew asked with a spark of excitement. "Really," Gillies said. Amanda watched the interaction with an unreadable expression, a mixture of caution and something softer. They ordered quickly, fries for the table, a club sandwich for Gillies, fruit and yogurt for Amanda. The boys soon wriggled in their seats, looking around the cafe patio, fascinated by everything. It gave Gillies a moment to finally speak. "Amanda," he began quietly, "I know this is complicated. I don't want to make things harder on you, but I need to understand." His voice trembled slightly. "Those boys, they're—" Amanda looked at the twins, ensuring they were distracted watching pigeons by the sidewalk. Then she returned her gaze to Gillies. Her eyes held years of silence, exhaustion, and courage. "Yes," she said softly, cutting through his question before he could finish. "They're yours." Gillies felt the world tilt. The sound of clinking cutlery, distant traffic, soft laughter from another table, it all dulled around him. The only thing he could hear clearly was the steady beat of his own heart pounding in his ears. He stared at Matthew and Mason, both oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening 2 feet away. They chatted quietly, turning a fry into a pretend airplane. Gillies blinked through the sudden blur in his eyes. How did I not know?" he whispered, barely able to speak. Amanda lowered her gaze to her coffee cup. "I found out I was pregnant shortly after you left for New York. We weren't on good terms. You made it very clear that starting a family wasn't something you wanted at that time." The memory stabbed him. The argument in his apartment, the way she cried, his stubborn refusal to bend, his obsession with the job offer in New York. I remember what I said, he admitted painfully. But I never imagined. Amanda, I would have stepped up if I had known. She nodded faintly. I believe you. But back then, everything was falling apart so fast. I was hurt. You were hurt. I tried to reach out once. Called you. You didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. I wrote a letter, but it came back undelivered. Wrong address. His breath caught. He had moved apartments in New York after just 2 weeks due to a lease mix-up. He never knew. He never checked in. He never tried to repair things. His silence had cost him 8 years. He rubbed his eyes with shaking hands. Amanda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She finally met his gaze again. I wasn't trying to punish you, she said gently. I just didn't know how to handle everything. And by the time I found my footing, life simply moved forward. Gillies looked at the twins again, overwhelmed by everything he had missed. Their first steps, their first words, their birthdays, their scraped knees, their giggles, their school mornings. He missed all of it. A wave of regret crashed into him so hard he had to grip the edge of the table. But why didn't you tell me later? He asked quietly. After they were born, or when they started school? Why not then? Amanda inhaled deeply. Because every time I thought about it, I remembered how you left. I remembered how focused you were on your new life, and I convinced myself that showing up out of nowhere saying, hey, you have 2 kids, would only create chaos. She paused, and I didn't want them to feel unwanted. Gillies shut his eyes, fighting tears. I would never. I know that now, she said softly. But back then, I wasn't sure. Their fries arrived then, breaking the tension for a moment as the twins happily dug in. Gillies watched them laugh, watched the way Amanda helped wipe ketchup from Mason's chin, watched the gentle ease of a mother who had done everything alone. He swallowed hard. They were his sons. He didn't need a test or confirmation. He knew. The resemblance ran deeper than eyes, their expressions, their posture. Even the way Matthew tapped his fingers while thinking reminded him of himself at that age. Gillies leaned closer, lowering his voice. Amanda, I want to be in their lives. If you'll let me. She studied him carefully. This won't be simple, Gillies. They've never had anyone else. It's always been us. Me and them. I need to know you're not just reacting emotionally. I need to know this isn't just guilt. It's not guilt, he said with conviction. It's clarity. I thought I knew what mattered. I didn't. Not until today. Amanda exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight she'd carried too long. We can take it slow, she said. Let them get used to you. Let things unfold naturally. I don't want to rush them or overwhelm them. I understand, Gillies replied. I'll follow your lead. Just then, Mason looked up with a fry halfway to his mouth. Mama, can he come again? He's funny. Matthew nodded. Yeah. Can he? Amanda smiled at them softly, then looked at Gillies. Yes, she said. He can. Gillies felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been locked away for years. Hope. Real, living hope. Amanda glanced at her boys again. We're going to a small community event tomorrow evening, she said. At Vernon Park. If you want to join us, you can. He nodded immediately. I'll be there. A small, cautious smile tugged at her mouth. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first step toward it. Gillies shifted his gaze back to the twins, unable to look away from the miracle. He had somehow missed, but now found himself standing right in front of his sons. His heart whispered the words before he could say them aloud. I won't miss anything ever again. Before he could speak again, the moment called for it. The perfect time. Comment below if you believe in second chances. Share this story with someone who needs hope. A soft rain tapped against the windows of Gillies' old off-campus apartment. A rare, summer drizzle in Arizona that made everything outside look blurred and heavy. Inside, the apartment was half-packed, boxes stacked, picture frames wrapped, his favorite desk empty. Even the air felt temporary. like the room itself knew one of them wasn't staying. Amanda stood in the middle of the living room with her arms wrapped around herself, not out of cold, but out of fear. Her dark curls were pulled back, her eyes red from tears she tried to hide, her voice barely steady. As she watched Gillies move from box to box, sealing them as though sealing pieces of their life, he didn't look at her. Not yet. Not because he didn't want to, but because looking at her meant facing everything he wasn't ready to say. She broke the silence first. "Gillies, can you stop for a second? Please?" He froze mid-movement, fingers gripping the cardboard. Slowly he set the tape roll aside and turned. His blue-green eyes Matthew and Mason would one day inherit, held a mixture of exhaustion and conflict. "I'm listening," he said quietly. Amanda swallowed hard. She had rehearsed this talk in her head all week, hoping it wouldn't come to this. "So you're really leaving tomorrow? Just like that?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "The offer starts next week. I can't delay. New York isn't going to wait for me." "You're talking about a city," she whispered. "Not a person. I'm right here. I'm the one waiting." Gillies closed his eyes. The weight of her words was too real, too honest. He wasn't prepared. "Amanda, you know I care about you. A lot. But we've talked about this. We want different things right now." Her breath shuddered. "No, you want something different. I want us. I thought we were building something real, something that wouldn't fall apart the second a bigger opportunity came along." He stepped away, pacing slightly, hands on his hips. "This isn't just an opportunity. It's everything I worked for. My father vouched for me. I have the chance to build something huge, maybe even my own company one day. And what about us?" she asked again, voice cracking. "Am I supposed to just accept being left behind because your future can't include me?" "Amanda, don't do that," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'm trying to be honest. Long-distance relationships don't work. You'd be here starting grad classes. I'd be buried under work in Manhattan. We'd barely talk, we'd fight, we'd lose each other anyway." Her laugh came out wounded. "We're losing each other now." He flinched. Amanda stepped closer, her voice trembling but determined. "Look at me, Gillies." He did. The sight of her tears nearly shattered him. "We've spent 4 years building this love," she said softly. 4 years talking about dreams, futures, maybe even marriage. I stood beside you through your internships, your all-nighters, your anxieties, your pressure from your father. I was there for all of it. And now that you finally made it, I'm not part of the vision anymore." His lips parted, but words wouldn't come. Amanda continued, heartbeat visibly pounding at her throat. "I'm not asking you to stay here forever. I'm asking you to consider a life where we're together. A life where your success doesn't erase me." Gillies turned away, unable to face her hope. "I can't think about settling down right now. I'm not ready for—" She finished for him, voice hollow. "For a family." He froze. Those were the exact words he'd been dancing around all month, the words she already sensed but prayed weren't true. "I didn't mean it like—" he started. "Yes, you did," she whispered. "You've been saying it without saying it. You can build a life in New York. You can chase your dreams, but you can't imagine building any part of that life with me." "That's not fair," he argued, but even he didn't sound convinced. She crossed her arms, holding herself together as her chest tightened. "What did you imagine then? Me visiting twice a year? Late-night calls squeezed between your deadlines? Me being some afterthought until your career stabilizes?" "I didn't want to drag you into a life where I'm barely present," he shot back. "I'm trying to protect us from something messy and painful." "Love is messy and painful sometimes," she said, wiping a tear. "But at least we'd be trying." Gillies paced away from her again. "I don't want to pretend we're strong enough to survive distance when everything right now is unstable." Amanda looked around the half-empty room. The boxes seemed to echo her emptiness. "Unstable," she repeated. "Gillies, the most stable thing in my life for the last 4 years has been you." He swallowed hard. His face softened, but only for a moment. "Amanda, I just can't commit to anything right now. Not marriage, not starting a family, not moving slower for someone else's timeline. I need to focus on my career first. Once I have that foundation, maybe we can—" She shook her head sharply. "Stop. Please stop. I don't want to be someone you come back to when you're done building your empire. That's not what I meant. It doesn't matter. That's how it feels." Her voice trembled. "Like you're choosing a version of your future where I don't exist." Gillies stepped toward her. "You do exist in my future. Just not right now." She let out a small, devastated laugh. "Do you hear yourself? You want me without wanting to keep me. You love me but can't stay with me. You imagine a future eventually, but not today." He reached for her hand. She pulled back. "Don't," she whispered. He froze where he stood. Amanda's eyes filled again, shimmering with heartbreak and clarity. "Gillies, loving you shouldn't hurt like this. But right now it does. Because I'm begging for something you've already decided you can't give." He felt his own eyes burning. "I don't want to lose you. You already chose what you're willing to lose." She stepped back toward the door. The rain outside had stopped, but the pavement glistened with fresh puddles. Her purse hung loosely from her shoulder, her keys in one hand. Gillies moved toward her, as if instinct might undo everything. "Amanda, wait, please." She halted, back still facing him. He tried again, voice breaking. "I love you, and I love you," she whispered. "But love isn't enough when one person is always halfway out the door." Slowly, she turned to face him one last time. "I wanted roots with you. I wanted a home. I wanted a future where we grew together instead of apart." Her lip trembled, but she held firm. "I can't follow someone who keeps running." He stepped forward, reaching for her again, but she shook her head. "Goodbye, Gillies." It was soft, final, a door closing on dreams neither of them knew would one day return to them in two small faces. She opened the door. The faint smell of wet asphalt drifted in. Gillies stood frozen as she walked out into the night, her silhouette illuminated briefly by the apartment hallway light before it faded. The door clicked shut. That sound, quiet, simple, cut deeper than any words exchanged. Gillies stumbled back a step, then another, until he dropped onto one of the moving boxes, burying his face in his hands. His chest heaved. His heartbeat thundered. His breath came uneven. He wanted to run after her, to take everything back, to say he'd stay, to say she mattered more than New York, more than ambition, more than the expectations that had boxed in his choices. But pride held him in place. Fear kept him silent. And the woman who once felt like his entire future walked away carrying a heartbreak she never deserved, and a secret growing inside her she never planned to face alone. He stayed there long after the footsteps disappeared, long after the hallway light dimmed, long after the rain evaporated from the pavement outside. By the time he finally stood, Amanda was gone. He didn't know it then, but he hadn't just lost the love of his life. He had walked away from his family before it even had the chance to begin. The night Amanda left Gillies' apartment, she didn't drive home immediately. She sat in her old sedan, hands trembling around the steering wheel, the rain-soaked night pressing against the windows. The silence inside the car felt louder than any argument they had just had. Her throat tightened as she replayed his words. "I'm not ready for a family. I have to focus on my career. Not right now." She pressed a hand to her stomach, flat at the time, still unknown to her that a new life was already forming inside. She didn't know she was pregnant yet. All she knew was that something inside her had cracked so deeply she wondered if it would ever heal. Amanda drove home in silence. She didn't stop by her favorite cafe. She didn't call a friend. She didn't even cry until she pulled into her mother's driveway. Under the dim porch light, she rested her forehead on the steering wheel and finally let go. She cried for the love she'd lost, for the future that suddenly felt blurry, and for the fear that she had misread everything between them. But even in heartbreak, Amanda was not someone who stayed broken. She let herself cry that night. Then she wiped her tears, took a long breath, and stepped out of the car with the same quiet dignity she would carry for years to come. 2 weeks later, nausea hit her like a wave in the middle of a morning class. At first, she brushed it off as stress, but the feeling lingered. Her appetite changed. Her fatigue grew. Something felt different. One afternoon, standing in front of the bathroom mirror with a pregnancy test in her hand, the world tilted. 2 lines. Positive. Amanda sank to the floor, the tile cold beneath her knees. She pressed a hand to her stomach, tears sliding down her cheeks, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming truth she was carrying the last piece of the man she loved. A part of him was growing inside her. But, with joy, came an equally powerful ache. He didn't want a family. He wasn't ready. He had chosen a new life without her. Amanda cried until her breath steadied. Then she stood, washed her face, and whispered to her reflection, "You can do this." She didn't call Gillies. She didn't dial his number even once, not because she didn't want to, but because every memory of that last night echoed in her heart like a warning. She remembered the way he couldn't look her in the eye, the way he clung to his ambition, the way he stepped back when she stepped closer. So she stepped forward alone. Pregnancy tested every limit she had. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Nights where she lay awake, wondering how she would manage school, work, and a baby. Appointments she attended alone, clutching her phone in case she changed. Her mind about calling him, yet never hitting the call button. Her mother, Monica, noticed the signs first. "You've been quiet lately," she said one afternoon, handing Amanda a warm cup of tea. Amanda hesitated, then whispered, "Mom, I'm pregnant." The cup nearly slipped from Monica's hands. "Oh, baby, come here," she murmured, pulling Amanda into her arms. They cried together for a long time, Amanda for the life ahead of her, Monica for the daughter who was now carrying such a heavy burden. "Is it Gillies?" her mother asked softly. Amanda nodded. "Does he know?" A longer silence. "I didn't tell him," Amanda confessed. "I don't want to hold him back. He made his choice, and I'll make mine." Monica cupped her face. "You're stronger than you realize. And you won't do this alone. I promise." That night, Amanda felt something shift inside her. Strength, resolve, love. She didn't know how she would raise a child, much less 2, but she knew she would rise to the challenge. During her second ultrasound appointment, she lay on the table with her heart pounding. The doctor smiled gently. "You're having twins." Amanda's mouth fell open. "Twins?" The doctor nodded. "2 healthy little ones." "Congratulations." Amanda covered her face with both hands, laughing and crying at the same time. Twins, 2 sons she would one day call her world. 2 reminders of a love that once was. 2 blessings she never expected, but who would shape her entire life. But twins meant double the responsibility, double the bills, double the worry. She whispered, Okay, Amanda, you can do this. 1 step at a time." And she did. Amanda's pregnancy was difficult, but she pushed through every challenge. She kept going to class. She worked part-time. She accepted help from family when she needed to, but refused to let anyone carry more than she could manage herself. When the twins were born, tiny, fragile, and early, Amanda spent nights in the NICU, singing softly to them, praying they would grow strong. Matthew, feisty even as an infant, constantly pulled at his tubes. Mason, calm and observant, watched her with wide, curious eyes. Amanda would place her fingertip inside their tiny palms, whispering, "You're lions. You're strong. You're going to grow up brave." She meant it. She believed it. She raised them to embody it. The twins grew, and with them grew Amanda's resilience. She finished her degree. She juggled motherhood with work. She attended church on Sundays, always sitting near the aisle so she could slip out if one of the boys got fussy. She built a village around her, family, neighbors, co-workers, people who stepped in with smiles and support, people who loved Matthew and Mason as their own. And even though she never spoke Gilly's name out loud, it lived quietly in her home. The boys had his eyes, his smile, his stubborn tilt of the chin, his curiosity, his intelligence. Sometimes, when the boys were asleep, Amanda would sit beside their beds and whisper to the still air. "You would have loved them, Gillies. They're more like you than you'll ever know." As the years passed, the twins began to ask questions. Gentle ones at first. "Mama, do we have a dad? Where is he? Is he nice?" Amanda never lied. She simply said, "Your father is someone I cared about very much. He lives far away, but you were always loved." Some days, the boys accepted the answer. Other days, they asked more. Matthew once said, "Does he look like us?" Mason added, "Does he have eyes like ours?" Amanda swallowed the ache and replied, "Yes, you have his eyes." She never spoke Gillies's name because she feared saying it aloud would stir up everything she spent years learning to survive. But she kept a box hidden in her closet, old photos from college, a few letters they once exchanged. And the blue graduation tassel Gillies had wrapped around her wrist the day they finished school. She didn't cling to the past, but she honored it quietly. One day, when the boys were about 6, Amanda saw Gillies from a distance at a grocery store in Phoenix. He was walking down an aisle with his stepmother, his expression deep in thought. Amanda froze. Her heart stuttered. She stood there with a box of cereal in one hand and 2 playful sons tugging at her shirt. For a moment, she imagined walking up to him. She imagined tapping him on the shoulder and saying, "Meet your sons." But when Gillies turned slightly, she saw the same driven expression he used to have, the one that told her he was still running towards something she wasn't part of. She stepped back into the next aisle and let him pass. It wasn't the right moment. Maybe there would never be a right moment. But fate had other plans. Even without being spoken, Gillies lived in their home in small ways. When the twins aced schoolwork, she saw his intellect. When they asked deep questions, she heard his old curiosity. When Matthew argued passionately, she saw Gillies' fire. When Mason sketched quietly, she saw Gillies' introspection. He was in them. He was always there, just never present. Amanda didn't resent him. Not truly. Life had taught her that some wounds do not come from cruelty. They come from timing. They came from a young man who didn't know yet that what he left behind would one day matter more than what he ran toward. So she raised her boys with love, with discipline, with hope, and with the strength of someone who learned to walk forward even when the road was built from shattered pieces of what could have been. Her sons became her pride, her joy, her purpose. She didn't realize fate was leading her toward a day when those 2 small boys, with their matching eyes, would stand at a funeral and unknowingly look into the face of their father for the very first time. And that father would recognize himself in them instantly. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that sinks into the walls after a long emotional day. Gillies sat on the edge of his childhood bed, the same bed where he once stayed up dreaming of success in skyscrapers and high-rise offices far from Arizona's slow, steady rhythm. Now, the silence wasn't comforting. It pressed in around him, urging him to confront truths he had ignored for years. The room looked untouched by time. The posters from his teenage years still hung crookedly on the wall. His old coding textbooks and robotics kits remained stacked on the shelves. Even the dent in the wooden desk, made when he dropped a trophy during a middle school meltdown, was still there. Everything felt familiar, yet somehow smaller, as though the man he became no longer fit in the space the boy once occupied. He ran his palm slowly along the faded quilt on his bed and exhaled shakily. Earlier that day, he had discovered 2 children, 2 boys, with his eyes staring back at him, and the woman he never stopped thinking about standing beside them. His mind couldn't fully grasp it yet. It was too big, too heavy, and too miraculous to process all at once. He felt like his heart had been peeled open, and suddenly asked to understand 8 years of missed moments. He dragged a hand down his face. "I have sons," he whispered to himself. 2 sons. His chest tightened, not with fear, but with an ache so deep it shook him. How had he lived a life so full on paper, yet so empty without knowing them? How had he spent years trying to build a future when the most important part of that future had been here all along, growing without him? As he leaned back, something caught the corner of his eye, on his old desk, beside a box of high school keepsakes. sat a small leather journal. It wasn't his. The handwriting on the cover, simple, bold, a bit uneven, belonged to one person only, his father. Gillies reached for it slowly, as if touching something fragile. His father hadn't been a man of many words, especially not written ones. He was the type who expressed his love through actions, a pat on the back, teaching him how to fix a fence, showing up at every school competition even when he was exhausted from work. Seeing a journal felt intimate, like hearing his father's private thoughts for the first time. He opened the cover. Most entries were practical, notes about ranch repairs, plans for the small tech firm, reminders about doctor appointments. But toward the back, the handwriting grew more deliberate, more reflective. And then he found it, the entry that shifted something inside him forever. Gillies stilled as he read the date, only months before his father passed. He swallowed hard and began reading every line slowly, afraid to miss a single word. Went into town today. Stopped by the farmer's market to pick up peaches for Monica. Never expected to see that girl Amanda there. Been years since I last saw her. She was with 2 boys, looked around 7 or 8. Lively kids. She had her hands full chasing them, but she looked happy, real happy. Didn't speak to her, didn't want to intrude, but something about those boys caught my eye. Maybe it was the way they moved, or maybe I'm imagining things. Could be that old man's trick of seeing what you want to see, but for a moment, I thought they looked familiar. Thought I saw Gillies' eyes on one of them, that same sharp spark he had as a kid. Probably nothing. Still, can't shake the feeling. Gillies' breath hitched. He pressed his thumb to the page as though anchoring himself. His father had seen them. His father had wondered. He turned the page with trembling fingers. Don't know if I'm right about those kids. Don't know if I'm wrong either. Should I have asked her? Would that have helped, or just stirred old wounds? One thing I do know, my boy keeps chasing things that shine but leave him lonely. Reminds me of myself when I lost his mother. I buried myself in work and thought time would fix everything. It didn't. I pray Gillies doesn't repeat my mistakes. If those boys are his, I hope one day he figures it out. Might be the thing that saves him from the life I lived too long. Full of success, yes, but missing what mattered most. Gillies shut the journal suddenly, his throat burning. He pressed his hand to his forehead as tears blurred his vision. His father had known. His father had seen what he refused to see for years. His father had prayed Gillies would find the truth. And now, on the very day he buried the man who raised him, that truth had finally come forward. He opened the journal again, needing his father's words, needing guidance from the one person he wished he could still talk to. Further down the page he found one final line. Life's too short to wait for the perfect time to love someone. You either choose them or you lose them. Gillies closed the journal more gently this time and placed it against his chest. The weight of it was grounding, painful, necessary. He whispered into the quiet room, "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" The silence didn't answer, but somehow he felt his father's presence. Steady, warm. The way it felt when they used to watch the sunset from the ranch fence line. He felt a tear slip from his cheek. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now. I'm not running anymore." He pressed the journal shut with resolve. Gillies stood and walked to the bedroom window. The moonlight spilled across the yard where he once played as a child. The quiet night carried the faint scent of the desert, dry earth, memory, and a new beginning woven together in the cool air. He thought of Amanda, asleep somewhere in Phoenix, unaware that the man she once loved was standing, here realizing the full weight of what he'd lost, and what he might still fight to reclaim. He thought of Matthew and Mason, the boys who unknowingly carried his blood, his features, his spirit. Boys who deserved everything he had never given them. The ache in his chest deepened, but so did his resolve. He wouldn't fail them again. He wouldn't ignore what mattered. He wouldn't walk away from the family he didn't know he had. He whispered into the night, "I'm going to be their father. I'm going to earn your trust again, Amanda." The words weren't just a promise. They were a vow. Have you ever found something that changed everything? Drop a fire in the comments if you believe in fate. The sun was beginning to slip lower behind the Phoenix skyline when Gillies pulled into the parking lot of Vernon Park. The air held that warm golden glow that made everything look softer, more welcoming than the jagged ache still sitting in his chest. Families gathered in clusters. Laughter spilled into the open air. Music drifted from speakers near the community stage. The smell of grilled corn and sweet funnel cakes rolled through the festival ground. This wasn't his world. Not the polished stone floors of corporate offices. Not the glittering skyline of New York. Not the crisp silence of conference rooms. This lively stretch of park filled with neighbors, children running barefoot in the grass, parents chatting under tents, was the world Amanda had built her life inside. This was where his sons grew up, where they laughed, where they lived. His heart thudded. He adjusted his shirt, suddenly nervous for a reason that had nothing to do with business or leadership. He wasn't here as a CEO. He wasn't here as a man with a title. He was here as someone trying to earn a place he'd missed for 8 years. He spotted them before they saw him. Amanda stood near a game booth where kids used softballs to knock down stacked cans. Her hair was tied back loosely, a small curl escaping near her cheek. She wore a soft blue sundress with a denim jacket over it, looking warm and gentle and real in a way that tightened something inside his chest. Matthew and Mason darted around her legs, bursting with energy. Mason attempted to aim a ball at the cans, tongue peeking out in concentration. Matthew cheered him on with enthusiastic claps. Gillies watched them from a distance at first, absorbing every detail. This was what he had missed. This joy, this simplicity, this togetherness. Amanda turned slightly, and her eyes found him. Her breath visibly caught, but she didn't look away. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and offered him a small, steady smile. Not too warm, not too cold. Carefully balanced. Gillies stepped forward. Mason noticed him first. He gasped loudly and tugged Matthew's shirt. "He's here!" Matthew whipped around, eyes widening. "Gillies!" he shouted, waving both hands so enthusiastically his ball flew out of his grip and rolled across the ground. Gillies laughed under his breath, moved by their innocent excitement. He crouched down slightly as they ran toward him, not into his arms, not yet, but close enough that he felt their joy like a sunrise breaking across his chest. "Hey, you two," he greeted, ruffling Matthew's hair lightly. "You came," Mason said, bouncing on his toes. "I said I would," Gillies replied gently. "I keep my promises." Matthew grinned. "We're playing games. Want to see if you can beat me?" Gillies smiled. "I'd love to try." Amanda approached then, her gaze soft but cautious. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I meant it yesterday," he replied. "I want to be here." Her eyes held his for a moment longer than necessary before she nodded. "Okay, let's take it one step at a time. I'm not going anywhere," Gillies added quietly. Amanda looked away, touched but trying to stay grounded. "Let's just enjoy the evening." They walked together through the bustling festival paths. Children darted between booths. Vendors called out deals. Music from a local band echoed across the park. Matthew grabbed Gillies' hand without thinking. Gillies froze, not out of discomfort, but from the sudden rush of emotion that hit him like a wave. His son was holding his hand. His son. But Matthew didn't seem to register the significance. He simply tugged him eagerly toward the next game booth. "Come on, you gotta try this one." Amanda saw the moment and inhaled softly, her expression shifting, delicate, hopeful, unsure. Gillies squeezed Matthew's hand gently and let himself be pulled forward. Mason clung to Amanda's side but kept peeking back to make sure Gillies was still close. When their eyes met, Mason grinned shyly. Gillies felt something unexplainable settle in his chest. Something warm. Something right. The twins guided him to a ring toss booth. Matthew shoved 3 rings into his hands. "You get 3 tries," he instructed with great seriousness. "I'm the champion. You can't beat me." Gillies smirked playfully. "Is that so?" Amanda crossed her arms, teasing. "He's actually very good." Don't underestimate him. Gillies tossed the first ring. It landed perfectly. The boys gasped. The second one, a miss. Ha! Matthew crowed triumphantly. Told you. Mason leaned close to his brother and whispered loudly, he's still really good for a... He paused, thinking hard. Then he said it. For a dad. The word hung in the air like a dropped glass. Amanda stiffened. Gillies froze. Matthew blinked in confusion, realizing what his brother just said. Mason covered his mouth with both hands. He stammered. He's not. We just... Gillies crouched down slowly to meet the boy's nervous eyes. It's okay, he said softly. You didn't do anything wrong. Mason's face reddened, but relief washed over him when Gillies smiled warmly. Amanda exhaled shakily, unsure how to intervene without making it worse. Matthew stepped closer and whispered, It kind of fits, though. Gillies felt his throat tighten. He didn't want to scare them. He didn't want to rush them. He wanted the title to come naturally, when they were ready. It's a big word, he said gently. One day, if it feels right, we can talk about it. But for now, you can just call me Gillies. Okay? Both boys nodded. Amanda watched quietly, something softening in her expression. Respect, gratitude, and the faintest glimmer of something that once lived between them. They continued walking when a familiar voice called out, Amanda! Amanda stiffened. She turned, and standing by a craft booth was her mother, Monica, holding a purse and wearing an expression that instantly sized up the situation. Gillies straightened, respectful but nervous. Monica approached with slow, deliberate steps. Her eyes went first to the boys, then to Gillies, then back to Amanda. Her expression tightened, protective, cautious, ready for battle if needed. Amanda cleared her throat. Mom, this is... I know who he is, Monica said sharply, never taking her eyes off Gillies. She folded her arms. You finally showed up. Gillies swallowed. Mom, I know She cut him off. No, you don't know yet. You have no idea what my daughter went through. You have no idea how many nights she stayed awake with 2 crying babies, how many sacrifices she made, how many times she pushed forward when everything felt impossible. Amanda closed her eyes in embarrassment. Mom, please. No, Amanda. Monica's voice softened toward her daughter, but remained firm toward Gillies. He needs to hear this. She stepped closer to him. If you're here to play games with those boys' hearts, leave now. Don't stand here smiling at them if you plan to disappear tomorrow. Don't let them get attached if you're not staying. They've lived their whole lives without a father. They don't need someone stepping in for a moment just to walk away again. Gillies felt her words like stones dropped into his chest, heavy, deserved, and painfully true. He didn't look away. He didn't defend himself. He just took a slow, steady breath. I agree with everything you said, he replied quietly. I failed Amanda. I failed the boys without knowing it. But I know now. And I'm not running. Not this time. Monica studied him. Long, hard, scrutinizing. She was a mother who had shielded her daughter and grandchildren for years. She didn't trust easily. After a tense moment, she said, Prove it. He nodded. I will. Amanda looked at him then, really looked, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen back then. Not fear, not pride, not hesitation, commitment. Gillies turned to her and held her gaze without flinching. I'm staying, Amanda. Her breath wavered, just slightly. The boys tugged at her hands, confused, but sensing something important had just happened. And for the first time since he returned to Arizona, Amanda didn't question his presence. She accepted it. The festival's music thumped softly in the background as the sky shifted from gold to deep orange. Lights strung across the park flickered on, casting warm glows along the walkways. Children ran by with glow sticks, parents chatted in small circles, and vendors began preparing for the evening rush. Gillies stayed close beside Amanda and the twins, each moment deepening the strange sense of belonging that tugged at his chest. Amanda remained cautious but not closed off. The boys stayed glued to his presence, as if he had been in their lives for years instead of days. Even Monica, after delivering the hardest truth he'd ever had to swallow, kept her distance yet didn't send him away. It felt like a fragile beginning. One wrong step could shatter everything. That was when Gilly's phone buzzed. At first, he ignored it. He was tossing a beanbag toward a target board because Mason had insisted he needed practice to beat Matthew at the next game. The phone buzzed again, then once more, this time with the distinct vibration pattern he had set for New York emergencies. His stomach tightened. Amanda noticed the shift in his expression. "Is everything okay?" He forced a small smile. "Probably just work stuff. It can wait." But the buzzing didn't stop. A fifth vibration, then a sixth. His jaw tensed. Matthew tugged his shirt. "Gillies, your turn." He tossed the beanbag but missed entirely. Mason giggled. "You're not very good at this anymore." Distracted, Gillies replied with a grin, but his heartbeat had quickened. He pulled the phone out to glance at the screen. 3 missed calls, 2 messages, and one name flashing now on the incoming call, Calder Tech Solutions, executive board his company. His top investors, his entire future as the CEO he had worked years to become. He stared at the screen, the life he had built buzzing aggressively in the palm of his hand. Demanding attention, demanding priority, demanding the old Gillies to step up and obey. Amanda watched him as his smile faded. Her eyes darkened slightly, not with anger, but with awareness. She had seen this before, years ago. The moment where work always won. Monica crossed her arms in the distance, observing carefully. Matthew tugged his hand again. "Aren't you going to play with us?" Gillies forced a breath in. "I'm with you. I'm right here." But the phone kept buzzing. Amanda stepped closer. Her voice was gentle but honest. "If you need to take it, you can." Gillies hesitated. 8 years ago, he would have answered immediately. 8 years ago, he would have left a conversation, a date, a celebration to chase the next opportunity. 8 years ago, ambition always won. But now, he looked at the twins' hopeful faces. He looked at Amanda's guarded but open expression. He looked at Monica, watching him with the stern truth of someone who knew exactly what was at stake. He answered the call, but stepped a few feet away to avoid worrying the boys. "Gillies here." The voice on the other end was sharp, authoritative. "Where have you been? We've been calling non-stop." "I was occupied," he said calmly, keeping his voice low. "We need you in New York." ASAP, the caller continued. "A major issue hit the automated systems this afternoon. The rollout is crashing. Investors are panicking. We need your leadership immediately." Gillies closed his eyes briefly. He knew this tone. He knew this crisis. He knew what they expected. Drop everything. Get on a plane. Fix the fire. Prove he deserved the title he held. "When's the flight?" Gillies asked, though his gut already twisted at the idea. 10 p.m. tonight, the voice replied. "You need to be on it. This is priority 1. If we don't handle this now, everything you've built could collapse. Everything he built. Everything he spent 8 years chasing. Everything he sacrificed Amanda for." He glanced back at her. Amanda was kneeling beside Mason, showing him how to tie a glow stick into a loop. Matthew was laughing at her attempt. The warm festival lights framed the 3 of them like a photograph. Not posed. Not forced. Just a real moment in a real life he had never been part of. His throat tightened. The voice on the phone kept pushing. "Gillies, we need an answer." He remembered his father's journal on the desk. Life's too short to wait for the perfect time to love someone. You either choose them or you lose them. He remembered Amanda crying in his old apartment. "I'm not asking you to stay forever. I'm asking you to consider a life where we're together." He remembered Matthew and Mason calling his name with joy in their voices. He remembered the ache in his chest, the ache of years lost. He remembered the vow he whispered the night before. "I'm not running anymore." Gillies straightened. "No," he said quietly. There was a stunned pause on the other end. "What did you say?" "I said no," he repeated, firmer this time. "I'm not going back to New York tonight. Handle the rollout without me. You can do it." "This could cost you everything," the caller snapped. Gillies looked again at the three people who had already cost him everything without even knowing it. His real everything. "Then it costs me everything," he said. "I'm choosing something else now." The voice sputtered in anger. "You're throwing away your entire future." "No," Gillies answered softly, eyes locked on Amanda. "I'm choosing my future." He hung up before they could argue. His hand shook slightly as he slipped the phone back into his pocket, but his chest felt lighter than it had in years. The moment he turned back toward the group, Amanda's eyes locked onto his. She could tell something had shifted. Something huge. He walked toward her slowly, his legs feeling strangely weak. "Everything okay?" she asked, rising to her feet. He nodded. "Yeah." "You sure?" She pressed gently. He breathed deeply. "They wanted me on a plane to New York tonight." Amanda's face paled a little. "Oh, but I'm not going," he said simply. Her breath caught. "Gillies, I'm staying," he said again, voice low, steady. "With you. With them. I'm choosing this." Emotion flickered across her face, disbelief, shock, fear, hope all tangled together. "Gillies, are you certain? This is your entire career." "My career will survive," he said gently, "but I won't survive missing any more of this." A soft wind drifted through the festival as the boys looked up at him curiously. Matthew stepped forward. "Are you really staying? Not leaving tonight?" Gillies crouched to eye level. "I'm not going anywhere." Mason grinned and jumped into a hug before he could stop himself, a small, impulsive act, but one that wrapped tightly around Gillies' ribs and squeezed emotions he couldn't hide. Gillies hugged him back carefully, as if he were holding something sacred. When Mason pulled away, Amanda wiped her eyes quickly, pretending it was just dust or wind. Monica watched silently, her guard still present, but not as sharp. Gillies rose slowly, turning to Amanda. "I'm not the man I used to be," he said quietly. "Let me prove it, not with words, with choices." Amanda looked at him for a long, trembling moment. Then she whispered, "Okay." That one word, cautious, fragile, hopeful, meant more to him than any promotion or title ever had. The sky over Vernon Park began to darken into a rich navy blue, the kind of color that made the festival lights glow brighter against the evening air. Rows of lanterns swayed softly overhead, casting gentle pools of gold along the walkway. Music floated from the stage, warm, steady, easy, creating a rhythm the crowd moved with as families gathered for the final event of the night. The fireworks were scheduled to start in 20 minutes. Amanda knew this moment was coming. The festival ended with a show every year. She had brought the twins for it since they were toddlers. They loved the lights, the surprise, the booming sound that echoed in their chests. But tonight felt different. Tonight, they weren't just standing under the open sky waiting for fireworks. They were standing with him. The boys clung to Gillies on either side as naturally as breathing, one holding his left hand, the other his right. It was a sight Amanda wasn't prepared for, and one that made her heart both soften and ache all at once. He looked down at them with quiet wonder, as though still learning how to process the fact that he belonged here, in this exact spot, with these exact children. Amanda watched him from a few steps away, her arms wrapped lightly around herself. She told herself to breathe normally, to stay calm, to not read too much into anything. But it was impossible not to feel everything. Gillies finally looked up and found her stare. His eyes softened instantly, the same way they used to years ago when he was young and in love and unaware of how fragile everything was. He released one of the boy's hands and stepped closer. "You okay?" he asked gently. Amanda nodded. "Yeah, just a lot to take in." "I know," he murmured. "Me too." Silence stretched for a moment, not awkward, but full, warm, heavy with understanding. The twins ran ahead, spotting a colorful booth selling glow-in-the-dark bracelets. They begged for 2 each. Gillies bought them without hesitation, stacking bracelets up their small wrists until they resembled little beacons in the night. Amanda shook her head with a playful eye roll. "You're going to spoil them." "Too late," he said, smiling. I'm already invested. Her smile faltered slightly, not in fear but in realization. She could see he meant it. When they walked back toward the open field reserved for the fireworks crowd, Monica stood near the edge, talking to a neighbor. The moment she saw Gillies holding the boy's glow-bright hands, her expression shifted. Cautious, yes, but undeniably moved. It wasn't approval, not yet. But it wasn't rejection anymore. Amanda approached her mother. "We're going to find a good spot to watch," she said softly. Monica nodded. "Go ahead. I'll be right behind." Her gaze flicked to Gillies, silently evaluating him like a mother does when deciding whether someone deserves access to her family. He held her stare, respectful and steady. Finally, Monica gave the smallest nod, not warm, not enthusiastic, but a step. And that tiny step mattered. They found a patch of grass near the center of the crowd. Children shrieked excitedly, blankets were spread across the lawn. Parents held cotton candies and warm drinks. The air was buzzing with anticipation. Gillies sat down first, crossing his legs. Mason immediately plopped into his lap without hesitation. It shocked him. Even after everything, it shocked him how natural it felt. He steadied the boy with careful hands, as though afraid too much pressure would break the moment. Matthew sat on his other side, leaning comfortably against his arm. Amanda sank onto the blanket beside them, tucking her dress under her legs. She watched her boys cling to Gillies, as if he had always belonged between them. She didn't speak right away. She couldn't. Gillies glanced at her. "You okay?" "I'm adjusting," she admitted. He nodded. "Take all the time you need." Before she could respond, a loud announcement echoed through the park. "Fireworks begin in 5 minutes. Get ready." The crowd cheered. Mason bounced eagerly on Gillies' lap. "They're starting." Matthew tugged his sleeve. "You're gonna love them. They're super loud." Gillies chuckled. "Good thing I don't scare easily." Amanda snorted softly. "He used to flinch at balloon pops." Gillies gasped dramatically. "That was once. And it was a big balloon." The boys laughed, delighted at the playful teasing between the adults. Amanda couldn't help smiling too. The moment felt like a small homecoming. Not perfect, not resolved, but real. The sky dimmed as the festival lights lowered. A hush swept through the crowd. All eyes turned upward. Then, boom! A burst of red blossomed across the night sky, shimmering like falling sparks. Mason squealed loudly. "It's so big." Matthew grabbed Gillies' arm. "Look, look!" Gold, blue, silver. Each explosion lit their small faces with awe. The boys pressed close to Gillies, absorbing every flash of color with bursting joy. Amanda watched them, all three of them, her heart tightening. This image, this moment, this softness, this closeness, it shouldn't have been possible. Yet it was happening, right in front of her. She whispered under her breath, "They look like a family." The words slipped out before she could trap them, and when she realized Gillies had heard, her breath caught. He didn't smile. He didn't push. He didn't claim anything. He simply looked at her with a raw, honest expression, as though acknowledging the truth without rushing it. The fireworks continued booming overhead, brilliant bursts cascading one after another. Mason leaned back against Gillies, looking up at him instead of the sky. "You're warm," he observed. Gillies laughed. Thank you. You feel like..." "Safe warm," Mason added sleepily, his voice small. Amanda's breath stilled, and then Matthew, without taking his eyes off the sky, said something even softer. "You feel like a dad." The world froze for a heartbeat. Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. Gillies swallowed hard, eyes stinging. He didn't correct the boy this time. He didn't deflect. He didn't step back. He placed a steady hand on Matthew's back and whispered, "I'll do everything I can to deserve that." Amanda felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. Another firework exploded overhead, a brilliant bloom of silver light. The crowd gasped in delight. Gillies looked at Amanda again, and this time he didn't hide what was. In his eyes, longing, regret, love that had never truly left him. Amanda met his gaze, her breath trembling. She had expected tonight to be awkward. She had expected distance, confusion. She had not expected this. This man choosing them, choosing to stay, choosing to hold space in his heart for the boys he didn't know existed. She tilted her head, watching him in the shifting glow of the fireworks. He leaned in slightly, slow, cautious, giving her time to pull back if needed. She didn't. She closed the remaining distance. Their lips met softly at first, then deeper, not desperate, not rushing. A kiss filled with everything they had lost and everything they could still rebuild. When they finally pulled apart, Amanda let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Gillies brushed a tear from her cheek, his thumb warm and gentle. "I've missed you," he whispered. Amanda swallowed. "I'm scared," she admitted. He nodded, "Me too." But neither stepped back. As the grand finale began, a rapid succession of bursts painting the sky, both twins instinctively dove toward Gillies, wrapping their arms around him from both sides. He hugged them tightly, holding them as if anchoring himself for the first time in 8 years. Amanda's throat tightened. She scooted closer, joining the small circle of warmth without thinking. For a moment, one brief, unforgettable moment, they sat together under the glowing sky, wrapped in one another like a family that had always existed in the background of fate, simply waiting for this night to pull it into reality. The fireworks crescendoed into a final explosion of shimmering gold that rained light over the entire park. The crowd erupted in cheers. But Gillies' world had already exploded inward. He didn't need to look at the sky. Everything he wanted was sitting beside him. When the lights came back on and the crowd began to disperse, Amanda packed the boys' glow sticks and shook off the blanket. "Ready to go?" she asked. Matthew stretched. "Carried," Mason echoed. "Carried," Gillies laughed. "Both of you, at the same time." "Yes," they said in perfect unison. He knelt down, scooped one boy onto each hip, staggering slightly under their combined weight. Amanda burst out laughing. "You okay?" "Never better," he said, breathless but grinning. And so they walked through Vernon Park, Gillies carrying both boys, Amanda walking beside him, close enough for their arms to brush occasionally the glow of lanterns lighting their path. The cooling night settling over them in a soft hush for the first time in 8 years, nothing felt broken. Something new had begun, something fragile, something hopeful, something real, and none of them wanted the night to end. The morning after the festival felt different, quieter, steadier, filled with a kind of hopeful stillness that neither Gillies nor Amanda had experienced in years. The Arizona sun was already rising warm and bright, brushing the sky with light gold as it crept across Amanda's street. The neighborhood was calm, with only the soft hum of a lawn sprinkler nearby and the distant bark of someone's dog greeting the day. Inside Amanda's living room, the world felt even more intimate. Soft shadows stretched across the floor as Gillies sat on the brown couch. His palms slightly damp, his breath steady but marked with anticipation. Today mattered. Today wasn't a grand festival, or a moment sparked by fireworks, or a crowd cheering around them. Today was quiet, and the twins deserved quiet honesty. Amanda had invited him over early. The boys were still in their pajamas, their curls a little messy from sleep, their faces bright with the joyful exhaustion of the night before. They kept glancing at him, with curiosity and excitement wrapped together. Last night, they'd called him Dad for the first time, but that moment had been born in celebration, in the rush of emotion under the sky. Today needed clarity. Today needed the truth spoken in a way their young hearts could understand. Amanda stood near the hallway, watching over them as if protecting both her children and the man who had just stepped into their lives. She wasn't tense, but she was alert, perceptive, every emotion behind her eyes ready to shift if the boys needed comfort. She trusted Gillies, but this moment mattered more than anything. "All right, boys," Amanda said softly. "Come sit for a minute." Matthew and Mason climbed onto the large rug in front of the couch, sitting cross-legged like they were waiting for story time. Gillies leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, wanting to be eye-level with them. The closeness of the moment struck him, These two little boys who carried his features, his smile, his eyes, his energy. They were looking at him with trust. Genuine trust. "Hey guys," Gillies began, trying to keep his voice even and warm. "I'm really glad we got to spend time together yesterday." Matthew grinned. "It was fun." Mason nodded with enthusiasm. "Yeah. You won me that squirt gun, even though I missed almost all the rings." Gillies chuckled softly. "You two made the whole night amazing. But today," he inhaled gently, "today I want to talk to you about something important, something that's about you and about me." Amanda quietly moved to the armchair nearby. She didn't speak, didn't prompt. She simply watched, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes bright but steady. Gillies leaned a little closer. "Do you remember last night, when you called me something?" The twins exchanged a look, that special silent twin language only they understood. Before Matthew said, "We said, Dad." Gillies nodded slowly. "Yeah. You did." Mason tilted his head. "Is that okay? Or was that not supposed to happen?" The innocence in that question nearly broke Gillies. He felt his chest tighten, but he forced himself to breathe, to stay steady for them. "It was okay," Gillies said softly. "But I want you to know why it was okay. I want you to understand the truth." He paused for a moment, letting the weight settle the right way. "Matthew, Mason, I'm your dad. Not pretend. Not just for last night. I'm your real dad." Both boys blinked, not shocked, but deeply focused. Children had a way of understanding important things quickly, as if the heart moved faster than logic. "For real?" Mason whispered. "For real," Gillies said, his voice warm but firm. "I didn't know when you were born. I didn't know I had two amazing boys in the world. But now I do, and I'm not going anywhere." Matthew shifted closer without even realizing it. So you're our dad because you're Mama's." He trailed off, searching for the right words. Amanda stepped in gently. "He's your dad because he's the person who helped bring you into this world," she said, her tone soft and full of care. "I didn't tell him before because things were complicated, but he knows now, and he wants to be here, for both of you." Gillies nodded, taking her cue and lifting the moment. "I want to learn everything about you two. What you like, what you don't like, what makes you laugh, what scares you, what your dreams are." His voice tightened slightly, but he didn't shy away. "I missed your first steps, your first words, your first everything, but I don't want to miss anything else." Mason crawled slightly closer, studying Gillies' face. "Do dads live with their kids?" Gillies looked to Amanda, not for permission, but for unity. She gave him a small, reassuring nod. "Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't," Gillies said honestly. "But what matters most is that dads show up, that they love their kids, and they are there whenever their kids need them. Right now, I'm learning how to be that for you." Matthew's voice was smaller but steady. "Are you staying in Phoenix?" The question hit hard because it was real, direct, and tied to everything Gillies had vowed to change. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I've already told my job that I won't be gone like before. I'm staying here for the two of you, and for your mom." Amanda's eyes filled, though she kept herself composed. She wanted this moment to belong to the boys. Mason reached out and touched Gillies' hand. "So, you're going to come to our school sometimes?" "If you want me to," Gillies said, smiling warmly. And help with homework," Matthew added, his voice hopeful. "Absolutely." Both twins shifted closer until they were kneeling right next to him, their small hands resting near his. Then Mason asked something that stopped the room. "Do we look like you?" Gillies swallowed, not in sadness, but in pure emotion. "Yeah," he whispered. "You do. You both have my smile, and my eyes. But you have so much of your mom in you too. The best parts." Matthew studied him for a moment, then leaned forward and wrapped his arms around Gillies' neck. Gillies froze for half a second, overwhelmed, then pulled him close with one arm. Mason didn't hesitate. He hugged them both, creating a small circle of warmth right there on the living room floor. Amanda pressed a hand over her mouth, her shoulders trembling from the quiet sob she refused to let out. Gratitude, relief, healing. It all rolled through her like a tide she had waited years for. Gillies held the boys gently, his voice low but full. "Thank you, both of you, for letting me be here." When the twins pulled back, Matthew wiped his nose with his sleeve and said, "Can we call you Dad all the time now?" Gillies smiled, a real deep smile that he hadn't felt in years. "Yes," he said. "You can." The twins beamed. Amanda stepped closer, placing a hand on her son's shoulders. "Boys, why don't you go get dressed? I'm making breakfast." "What are we having?" Mason asked. "Pancakes," she said. They cheered and ran to their room, leaving their father and mother standing in a soft, quiet moment. Gillies exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't know how emotional that would be." "You did well," Amanda whispered. "Better than I imagined. They needed that. More than you know." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the quiet strength that had carried her through so much. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me the chance to do this." Amanda didn't reply immediately. Instead, she stepped closer and rested her hand lightly on his arm. They've been waiting for something they couldn't name. Now they know. There was no kiss, no dramatic gesture. Just two parents standing in the morning light, united for the first time in years. A family, not perfect, not polished, but real, and beginning again. The morning after Gillies' talk with the twins flowed with an unfamiliar calm, the kind that came not from silence, but from commitment settling into someone's bones. He had spent the entire breakfast at Amanda's kitchen table, listening to the boys argue over whose pancake was bigger, watching Amanda move around the stove with a quiet sense of comfort he hadn't witnessed in years. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't racing to check emails or scanning for incoming calls. His phone stayed face down, untouched. But reality had a way of finding anyone, even those trying to build a new life. Later that afternoon, Gillies stepped into the rental house he had secured in Phoenix for his extended stay. It was modest compared to his New York penthouse, a single-story home with simple furniture, desert-colored walls, and sunlight pouring through wide windows. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right, a place to start fresh. He had barely set down his keys when he noticed the blinking light on his laptop. A flood of messages waited for him, reminders from his assistant, calendar, alerts, board memos, and a request to review a revised financial forecast. He hadn't looked at any of them in nearly 24 hours. For a man who once measured life by the minute, this was unheard of. He walked toward the dining table where he had set up a temporary workstation. His laptop sat there like an old rival waiting for a rematch. He inhaled slowly before opening it. Immediately dozens of messages loaded. Urgent, revised third-quarter projections need approval. Board wants Monday agenda finalized. Investors requesting clarity on CEO availability. Status check. Are you returning to New York next week? And one from Neil, the COO who had covered for him during the festival. Need guidance. The team is waiting for your direction. Call when you can. Gillies leaned back in his chair. His jaw tightened slightly, not from anger, but from recognition. This was the weight he had carried for years, the weight that had ruled his decisions, the weight that had pulled him away from Amanda once, and from the twins, without him ever knowing. But now, everything felt different. He clicked open a financial report, trying to focus. Numbers blurred and cleared, rows of projections rising and falling. For years, these figures had brought him satisfaction, proof of growth, proof of leadership. Now, they felt like a language he still knew, but didn't feel in his soul anymore. His thoughts drifted to that morning. Matthew leaning against him as he ate pancakes, Mason asking if he would show up at their school someday, Amanda giving him that quiet, grateful glance when he told the boys the truth. He wasn't the same man he was in New York, and he didn't want to be. Still, responsibility didn't disappear because a man discovered what mattered most. No, responsibility changed shape. It demanded balance. His phone buzzed on the table, vibrating insistently. He turned it over. Neil again. Can you hop on a quick video call? Team stuck on next steps. Gillies rubbed the bridge of his nose, then clicked to accept. Neil appeared on screen, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled, looking like he'd been living off caffeine. Boss, Neil breathed out. We're hitting bottlenecks. The board wants confirmation that you're still leading Monday's meeting in person. They're nervous, and the investors are nervous because the board is nervous. We need your voice on this. Gillies lowered his eyes thoughtfully. I hear you, he said. But those words were no longer automatic. He wasn't surrendering without thought. Neil straightened, sensing something new in his tone. Are you still planning to return to New York next week? Gillies paused. It wasn't hesitation. It was deliberation. I'm not sure yet, he said honestly. Things have changed here. Neil blinked. Changed? You mean the family situation? Gillies nodded once. I need to be here for them. I can't leave the way I used to. Neil dragged a hand across his brow. Gillies, I understand. Really, I do. But the company depends on you. The board depends on leadership. Gillies interjected gently but firmly. Not on me being in New York every second. Leadership is about building a team that functions even when the CEO is not in the building. Neil stared at him through the screen as if seeing him in a new light. This is different. Not bad different, but different. It is, Gillies agreed. And I'm not apologizing for it. There was a long, reflective silence before Neil spoke again. So, what's the plan? Gillies exhaled slowly. I'm working remotely for now. I'll handle Monday's meeting by video, and I need you to take point on the investor briefing. Neil's eyebrows shot up. Me, you're ready, Gillies said. You've been ready. You just didn't know it because I was always there. A slow smile crept across Neil's face. Surprised, honored, empowered. All right, I'll do it. But you'll still oversee strategy, right? Of course, Gillies replied, closing a document with a controlled flick. I'm not checking out. I'm adjusting. A moment later, he ended the call and closed the laptop gently, not angrily but with intention. He stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, the desert scenery stretched into the distance, open, unpressured, full of possibility. This was the landscape he grew up with, the landscape he left behind, and now, the landscape guiding him forward. He thought of something Amanda once said back in college, long before heartbreak twisted their paths. Success without someone to share it with feels empty. He finally understood. Later that evening, Gillies drove back to Amanda's house. She was in the yard watering her small garden, basil, tomatoes, and a few flowers she had planted with the boys. The late sunlight softened her features, and she looked peaceful in a way that made his heart tighten. She turned when she heard his footsteps. How did work go? She asked quietly, handing him a glass of iced water she had prepared earlier, as if she somehow knew he'd need it. Gillies took a long sip before answering. I told them I'm staying here. Amanda froze, her hand still hovering over the basil leaves. Staying, for good. For as long as you and the boys want me here, he said. For as long as it takes to build something real. She looked at him, not with disbelief, not with fear, but with deep, careful consideration. And work? She asked. Will they accept that? They'll adapt, Gillies said simply. I've adapted for years. Now it's their turn. Amanda exhaled softly, like a weight she'd carried for years had eased. You're really doing this? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not choosing between work and family anymore. I'm choosing balance. And this home, this life with you and the boys, it's worth rebuilding everything for. Amanda's eyes softened in a way he hadn't seen in years. They need you, Gillies. More than you know. I need them too, he admitted. She nodded, her gaze drifting toward the lit windows of the boys' bedroom. They're doing their homework. They asked if you'll help them tomorrow. Gillies smiled. I'll be here. And the day after? She asked. He met her eyes. Yes. And next week? Yes. Amanda's chest rose with a slow breath, her heart finally accepting the truth. This time, he wasn't running toward success. He was running toward family. She stepped closer, just an inch, just enough to let him know that the walls around her heart were lowering brick by brick. "All right," she whispered. "Let's see what this becomes." Gillies didn't pull her into his arms. He didn't need to. The moment was already full, steady, grounded, real. For the first time in his life, he felt like a man who was not just leading a company, but leading himself toward the life he should have chosen long ago. And this time, he wasn't stepping into it alone. The following week brought a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Gillies spent every morning working remotely from the dining table in his rental house, every afternoon with Amanda and the boys, and every evening learning pieces of a life he once walked away from but was now determined to protect. And tonight was something different, something symbolic, a dinner with both families. Amanda's mother, Monica, had finally agreed, and Gillies' stepmother, Elise, had responded to his invitation with a quiet, heartfelt message, "I'll be there." Family comes first. That single sentence had nearly made him crumble. He hadn't realized how much he needed someone from his own side of life to show up for him, especially now that he was trying to show up for others. Amanda spent the late afternoon preparing the house. Her little dining room had never looked so warm. The boys helped set the table, placing mismatched placemats with pride, each determined to pick the coolest one. "Mine has astronauts," Matthew announced. "Yeah, but mine has dinosaurs holding tacos," Mason countered triumphantly. Gillies laughed softly as he wiped the counter. "Pretty sure the dinosaurs win this round." Amanda glanced at him with a smile. "You've adapted quickly." He shrugged lightly. "They make it easy." His words hung in the room, light but full. Amanda didn't reply. She didn't need to. The smile she gave him said enough. Monica arrived first, carrying a baking dish covered with foil. "It's just mac and cheese," she said as she stepped inside, though the dish looked heavy enough to feed a dozen. The moment she entered, her eyes scanned the space. The table, the boys, Gillies standing near the kitchen doorway with careful respect. She acknowledged him with a nod, firmer than before, a gesture that said, "I see your effort." "Good evening," Gillies greeted, stepping forward. "Can I take that for you?" She released the dish into his hands but held his gaze. "Thank you. And thank you for being here. The boys talk about you non-stop. I'm trying to earn that," he said quietly. Her expression softened, barely but noticeably. Before anyone could say more, there was a knock at the door. Amanda wiped her hands on a towel, inhaled, and opened it. There stood Elise, elegant but warm, her eyes instantly softening at the sight of Amanda and the boys. She opened her arms. "Oh, Amanda. It's good to see you again." Amanda stepped into the embrace, smiling with a gentle relief she didn't expect. "It's been too long." "It has," Elise agreed, before looking down at the twins. "And these must be my grandsons." Matthew and Mason stared up at her, curious, excited, unsure. Gillies stepped forward, his voice filled with a tender pride. "Boys, this is Elise. She's your grandma." The word grandma hit them both at once. Mason's eyes widened. "We have two grandmas?" "Yes, you do," Elise said with a bright smile as she knelt down to their level. "And I'm very happy I get to meet you." Matthew leaned closer. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Elise chuckled softly. "If they help me make friends with you two, then I absolutely love dinosaurs." The boys exchanged a look. Approval granted. Amanda stood back, watching the new connection forming right in her living room. She felt something she hadn't let herself feel in years, the comfort of shared responsibility, shared hope, shared love. It was surreal. Dinner came together with a comforting ease. Amanda set the salads down while Monica placed her dish on the table. Gillies carried a platter of chicken he'd grilled at his rental house, and Elise arranged the drinks. The boys ran back and forth carrying napkins and spoons like tiny waiters. When everyone finally sat down, it felt like a meeting of two timelines, the past and the future, both converging into something still fragile but undeniably real. Conversation began politely. Amanda asked Elise how she'd been. Elise asked Monica how long she'd lived in Phoenix. The twins proudly announced that they were now officially huge brothers because they were helping all night. Gillies mostly listened at first, letting the women talk while soaking in every detail. The laughter, the clinking of utensils, the sound of the twins debating which dessert they hoped existed. And then Monica looked directly at Gillies. "So," she began slowly, "how has work been with you staying here?" The question wasn't confrontational, but it held weight, the kind only a protective mother could place on the table. Gillies swallowed, setting down his fork. "It's been different, challenging sometimes, but I'm still able to handle things, even with everything going on." She pressed. "Yes," he replied, "because being with the boys is just as important as anything else I manage, maybe more." Amanda watched him closely. His voice wasn't defensive. It wasn't an attempt to impress anyone. It was truthful, quiet, solid. Elise dabbed her napkin gently against her lips. "He means that," she said softly. "He always had so much of his father's drive. It took losing too much to realize drive isn't everything." Monica studied Gillies for a moment, then finally relaxed back in her chair. "Well," she said, "the boys adore you. And Amanda seems lighter." Amanda stiffened, embarrassed. "Mom, it's true," Monica said simply. Gillies' cheeks flushed slightly. He didn't try to hide it. "I want to be someone they can rely on," he said, his eyes shifting from Monica to Amanda. "All of them." Elise smiled warmly toward Amanda. "Your boys are remarkable, and I want you to know, if you ever need anything, I'm here as well. They're family now, your family." Those words made Amanda blink, emotion tightening her throat. The boys didn't notice. They were too busy stealing extra bread rolls. Later, as everyone cleared dishes, the boys dragged Monica and Elise into the living room to show them a new drawing they'd made, 4 figures holding hands under a sun. Gillies carried plates to the sink. Amanda followed with glasses. As they stood close in the warm kitchen light, washing and drying dishes together, Amanda finally spoke. "You handled everything really well tonight." He shrugged gently. It mattered to me," she said, her voice softer than she intended. The hum of conversation from the living room filled the background. Laughter. Questions. The boys' voices rising with excitement. Their families were blending, not perfectly, not instantly, but naturally. Gillies set a dish in the drying rack and turned toward her. "Thank you for letting this happen." Amanda leaned against the counter. "It wasn't easy, but watching you with them, watching you with my mom, I think I'm finally starting to believe this isn't temporary." He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the sincerity in his presence. "Nothing about this feels temporary," she sighed, not in frustration but in quiet release. "I'm scared, Gillies." He nodded. "So am I. But," she continued, licking her lips nervously, "I'm also hopeful." He had never heard a word more precious. He moved just a little closer. "Hope is good," he whispered. "We can build from hope." The moment held, warm, charged, yet gentle. And then the twins burst into the kitchen. "Dad, Grandma Monica said we can have dessert now." Gillies turned, grinning. Did she approve it? "Yes," they shouted. Amanda's eyes softened again, this time without hesitation. "Then dessert it is," she said. After dessert, after hugs, after both grandmothers left with promises to return soon, the house quieted. The boys fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from excitement and sugar. Amanda walked Gillies to the door, her arms folded lightly across her chest. "You were good tonight," she said softly. "Really good." He met her eyes. Steady, sincere. "I meant every part of it." She hesitated, then stepped forward and placed a gentle kiss on his cheek. It wasn't the fierce, emotional kiss from the festival. It was tender, intentional, a beginning. "Good night, Gillies," she whispered. His voice was low. "Good night, Amanda." He walked to his car feeling something he had chased for years but never found in any boardroom, conference call, or business success. Peace, real peace. And for the first time, he finally believed he was building a life worth keeping. The morning sun climbed over the Arizona horizon with a gentle brightness that felt almost celebratory on its own, as if the day itself knew something big was coming. The sky stretched wide and clear, painted with soft streaks of gold. The warmth settled across Amanda's backyard, casting a glow over the tables. Decorated with blue and green streamers, the twins had chosen themselves. Today was Matthew and Mason's 9th birthday. Amanda stood near the sliding door, hands lightly gripping the frame as she watched the boys sprint back and forth across the yard. They alternated between checking the snack table and adjusting their balloons, determined to make sure. Everything was perfect for the best birthday ever, as Mason had declared before the sun even rose. Gillies had been there since early morning helping set up. He stood by the grill now, adjusting the heat as he arranged chicken and burgers, his expression focused but relaxed, completely at ease in a role he had only recently stepped into. The smell of food carried through the yard, wrapping around the laughter of the boys, as they chased each other with matching red and blue ribbons tied around their wrists. Amanda stepped outside, brushing a strand of hair from her face as she approached Gillies. "Everything looks good," she said softly. He turned, smiling at the sight of her. "You deserve a break. I can handle the grill." "So, you're a chef now?" she teased lightly. He shrugged with a grin. "Today I'm anything these boys need." She felt her heart warm, not with surprise but with recognition. This wasn't the ambitious man she remembered from their younger years, always 1 foot out the door. This was someone grounded, steady, meeting life with intention. Her smile softened. "They're lucky." His gaze deepened. "So am I." Before Amanda could answer, a pair of small voices shouted from across the yard. "Mom! Dad! Look!" Matthew and Mason were running toward them, each holding a hand-painted cardboard sign shaped like a rocket. The colors were uneven, the outlines crooked, but the pride in their faces made the artwork perfect. "You made these?" Gillies asked, crouching low. "Yep," Matthew said, chest puffed. "They're our birthday flags." "Because," Mason added with wide eyes, "today's big." Neither boy realized just how big, though Amanda felt her breath tighten slightly. She knew the weight of the coming moment. She had felt it building across the past week, in the way Gillies looked at her, in the way he cottoned to the boys, in the way their families blended with almost effortless warmth. The signs were a distraction, but a sweet one. Gillies examined the messy paint strokes with exaggerated seriousness. "These might be the best rockets I've ever seen." Both boys giggled proudly, before sprinting off again to chase each other around the lemon tree. Amanda watched them for a long second. No matter what happened today, their lives had already changed. By mid-afternoon, neighbors began trickling in, parents with kids from school. A couple of Amanda's co-workers, a few families from down the street. None were named, just friendly faces offering small gifts or cheerful greetings. Monica arrived with another casserole, though she insisted it was just something simple. Elise stepped in minutes later, carrying a bag filled with wrapped presents for the boys. She hugged Amanda warmly, then greeted Gillies with pride glowing behind her eyes. "You've done well," Elise murmured to him while helping set out the drinks. He nodded, his voice low. "They deserve everything." The sun settled overhead, casting a comfortable brightness across the yard. The twins tore open gifts and shouted with excitement every few minutes. They ran from station to station, the balloon toss, the paint-your-own-cookie table, the inflatable soccer goal Gillies had rented. Every time they looked his way, he was already watching them, proud, content, filled with something deeper than anyone realized. As the afternoon unfolded, Amanda found herself watching Gillies more than she intended. He wasn't performing for anyone. He wasn't trying to impress. He was simply living in each second, helping, laughing, grilling, playing referee when the boys argued over candy. It was the life she once pictured with him, the life she once mourned, now standing right in front of her. Her chest tightened, not in fear, not in uncertainty, in readiness. As the sun began dipping toward the horizon, the backyard buzz settled into eager anticipation. The boys had been waiting for this moment since morning. Amanda stepped out from the kitchen carrying their birthday cake, chocolate covered in blue frosting, decorated with tiny icing rockets to match the signs the boys had painted. The entire crowd cheered as she set it on the middle table. "All right," she called out. "Everyone gather around." The boys raced over, shouting with excitement. Gillies slipped behind them, resting a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. Monica and Elise exchanged warm looks, proud grandmothers standing side by side. Amanda lit the candles, one by one. 11 little flames danced in the golden light, 9 for the boys' age, and 2 extra because they had insisted they wanted bonus wishes. Everyone began to sing, "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Matthew and Mason. Happy birthday to you." The boys inhaled dramatically and blew with all their strength nearly, knocking out one of the candles in Amanda's hand from sheer enthusiasm. The crowd clapped, the boys cheered, and Gillies watched them with a tenderness so deep it softened every part of his face. Then he looked at Amanda, and Amanda felt her breath still. Gillies stepped forward. "Wait," he said, with a gentle authority that quieted the yard instantly. The twins turned toward him, confused but eager. Amanda froze with the cake knife in her hand. Gillies placed both hands on the table, not for support, but to ground himself. His eyes lifted to Amanda's, steady and sure. "I need one more moment," he said. Amanda blinked, her heart thudding. The crowd murmured softly but respectfully. Gillies stepped around the table until he stood right in front of her, close enough for her to see. The slight tremble in his hands, close enough for the boys to bounce on their heels in anticipation. "Amanda," he began, his voice low but clear, "I've spent years chasing things that never mattered as much as the people standing right here." Her chest tightened. "I made mistakes, painful ones, and I can't undo the time I've lost with you, or with them." He glanced at the boys, then back at her. "But these last weeks have shown me what life is supposed to feel like." The yard fell completely silent. Gillies reached into his pocket. Amanda's breath caught. Matthew gasped. Mason grabbed his brother's hand. Monica brought a hand to her chest. Elise smiled knowingly. Gillies dropped to one knee. Not dramatic, not rushed, but steady. "Amanda," he said softly, voice thick with emotion, "would you let me spend the rest of my life making things right, building a future with you and our boys? Would you marry me?" Amanda's eyes filled instantly. She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed by the depth of the moment, not because she didn't expect it someday, but because the sincerity, the softness, the love in his voice struck her deeper than she imagined possible. For a second, she couldn't speak. Gillies stayed perfectly still, waiting. Then the boys broke the silence. "Mom, say yes. Please, Mom, please." Amanda laughed through her tears, a soft, breathless sound, before lowering her hand. "Yes," she whispered. The word was small, but the world around them erupted into cheers. Gillies stood, pulling her into a full embrace, as the twins practically tackled them both in a 4-person hug. "Dad, Mom said yes. You're getting married. This is the best birthday ever." Amanda laughed into Gillies' shoulder as he held all 3 of them close, the woman he loved, and the children he had vowed to never lose again. As the neighbors clapped and the sun dipped low across the Arizona sky, the new family stood in the center of the yard, wrapped in a moment that felt like the beginning of everything they once thought they had lost. And a cake waited patiently on the table behind them, untouched, forgotten. For now, because this was the only sweetness that mattered. The birthday celebration slowly wound down as the bright Arizona afternoon shifted into a soft, copper-toned evening. Guests trickled out with warm smiles and lingering congratulations. Children waved goodbye to the twins, who were still buzzing with excitement from the surprise proposal. Monica gathered dishes in the kitchen, while Elise slipped out to call a taxi, promising the boys she'd see them again soon. The yard grew quieter. Streamers still danced lightly in the breeze. The half-melted ice in the punch bowl clinked softly as it settled. The glow of the hanging patio lights warmed the small space as the sun dipped lower behind the rooftops. Amanda stepped into the yard with 2 glasses of sparkling juice, one for